Hello there, and a very warm welcome to another video from Change Tips and Tools. This video is part 3 of the Resource Capacity Planning series with me, Phil, the Brummie that hails from Birmingham, England. And remember, as promised, I will go through this training series as an end-to-end project, not skipping any detail, and I will walk you through step by step on how to build this template for yourself. However, if you can't wait until the end of this training series, you can get a copy of the completed template on the Change Tips and Tools Patreon, and the link can be found in the description. Now, the purpose of today's video is to create the base resource demand table and then generate the demand data in Power Query for this resource capacity planning template. And by the end of the video, you will again learn some more new tricks to create dynamic dependent drop-downs in Excel. So in today's video, we're going to focus on the last data entry requirement of the user, which is going to be the resource demand tab here. So we're going to create the resource demand table, and we are then going to move it into Power Query, do some data transformation, and then generate that demand data and add it to our data model within Power Pivot. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So without further ado, let's do this. So once again, I don't need the support sheet for my resource capacity that we created in the last video available. So I'm going to right click on that tab and select hide, and then I'm going to do the plus sign, and let's do rename this tab to be number 4, and this is going to be our resource demand sheet. Return, and again let's make this color a nice green like so, and this will be our 4th and final data entry point for the user as far as the complete data requirement to run this resource capacity planning template. So I'm going to start on B3 again. So the first column is going to be program, and that will be a drop down. We then want the project, our demand. Just make that a little bit wider. Let's make these column width 25. I'm then going to want the starter demand. So this is the program. So that's going to be a drop down based on our program table. I then want a filter. So as soon as I've selected my program, it only shows me those projects that belong to that program. So I'm going to show you a new way of doing a dependent drop down that you probably haven't seen before. Typically in the past, you will have been shown a drop down where you've maybe got a couple of columns, a couple of rows, and you've got some drop downs and then some drop downs here that are based on a specific cell or dependent on a specific cell. I'm going to show you how to create a dynamic one that's dependent that you can use within a table. So I'll show you how to do that in this video. So we've got the project, we want the start date, so when do we want them to start on this particular project, and then what hours from Monday to Saturday. So if I type for Monday, MON, then drag that all the way to Sunday, like so. So those are going to be the hours a day that we want them, and then when do we want them to finish on this assignment. Then the skill set. So what skill set do we need for that project? And then based on that skill set, the appropriate resource, like so. So let's make that 15 width. And all I'm doing is right clicking on the column width, and setting it to 15 like so. Let's make these two here. Right click, column width, 25. Right. Now in here I'm going to allow for data input of around 30,000 rows in here. And again, entirely up to you how many you want in here. So I'm going to allow for 30,000. So I want to make sure. So I'm going to do equals sequence again. And I'm just going to type 30,000. 1, 2, 3. And obviously this helps me as well, copying all the different data validations and formats all through without me having to scroll all the way down. So this really helps me do that as well. So we are going to need another support sheet for our drop downs. So I'm going to do the plus sign again. I'm going to rename it. And I'm going to call this demand support sheet, like so. And the first filter that we need to take care of is the program and then the dependent project drop down as well. So I'm going to put something in here as a meaningful name here. So this is going to be my resource allocation filters. And this first set is going to be my program projects. Like so, let me just expand that out. So if you remember, we've got a total of 20 programs. So that is going to be that's going to be what my max is going to be as far as allowing for in this drop down filter. And obviously then we've got a max of 50 projects like so. So on here, as far as this is concerned, I want 20 programs. So I'm going to do equals sequence again. I'm going to do 20 because I want to make sure I've got the 20 there. And then across, I'm going to do a sequence of 50 here for how many projects that I'm going to have. Yeah, so if I start at equals sequence, and I'm going to have 50 projects. That's the max I can have based on that table. So I've got a sequence of 50. So those are my projects. I'm then going to need the programs going across here as well. So I'm going to do a sequence again because it's 20. So I don't want rows, I want columns. So I'm going to do 20. So I've then got the 20 going across. This will all make sense in a minute. So let's do this filter here for the program drop down. So I'm going to do equals filter. My array is going to be table program, open square bracket, select programs column, close that square bracket, and then include is going to be table program again, open square bracket, select programs, close that square bracket, and where it does not equal empty, i.e. quotation marks, then I want it. Then all I'm going to do is wrap that in a sort. Done. So now I've got my programs. But now I want to do the same thing where I want these programs to go across. Yeah, so I want it to go across here. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to do the filter equals filter again. In fact, what I can do is just take this. No, I want you to see me build it up, because I'm going to show you how to make this absolute, because you want to be able to drag that formula across. So we need to make the table reference absolute. So in the same way that you can make a cell reference absolute using the dollar signs, I'm going to show you how you can do that with a table as well. So let me show you. So if I go equals filter, open bracket, the array is going to be table program. I'm then going to do 2 open square brackets, programs, 1 close square bracket, colon, open square bracket, programs, and then double close square bracket. And that makes it absolute. So when I drag it, it won't move it relatively to the right. Okay, so I'll fix that point, that reference to the program. So my include is going to be table, program, double open square bracket, programs, close square bracket, then do the colon, open square bracket, select programs, and double square bracket where it does not equal empty. And I'm going to close that square bracket, boom. I'm then going to add a sort to that, wrap it in a source. So now I've got to get this to go across, and this is why I've put these double, the double square brackets to fix it on that table. Is if I was to drag it without that, it would then just error out. And what I'm going to use these numbers to reference an index. So I'm going to wrap this in an index function and say, right, show me the first row, row number 1, which will be A, row number 2 will be B, and so on. So if I do the index function, and then the reference, so that's my array, the sort and filter. So if I reference that there, D4, as in show me row 1 in that array, close that bracket and hit return, it's now showing me program A. So again, if that errors for any reason, so I'm going to do if error, and I'm just going to say if there is an error there, just leave it blank with those quotation marks like so. Now when I drag this across all the way to here to 20, you now see it's pulled those across. So I've got it filling across. Then the last thing that I'm going to do here then is I am going to do a filter against this cross-reference table. So where each project and program have got a relationship here, is I can then within this, I can go equals filter. My array is going to be table cross-reference. Remember, I'm going to copy this all the way across to the right. So I'm going to do 2 open square brackets. I'm going to select projects because that's what I want to return. Close that square bracket, colon, open square bracket, select project, then 2 square brackets to close. And then as far as my include is concerned, again, table, portfolio xfer, again, 2 open square brackets. And basically it's where the program, so close that square bracket, colon, open square bracket, and then select the program, and 2 close square brackets where it equals this cell here, C, so it's D5 there, like so. If I close that bracket, and again, what I'm going to do, if it doesn't find anything, I'm just going to leave it blank like so. And there you go. So we've now got our programs, and again, you could wrap that in a sort. I'm not going to do that here. All I've got to do now is copy that across, like so. And there, now you can see it's created that reference. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make this clear, that just so I can visually see it, like so. Just make that so I can now see it visually. This is where we do the clever bit now to make it dynamic. So if I go to my resource demand, and let's put that as far as data validation. Let's point it to our first drop down we did, so list on demand support sheet. Let's do it to the programs, and again the hash mark to include the spill range. So enter that in, click OK. So let's choose program A there. Now on here, we're going to use the XLOOKUP. Fantastic, and you can use this function within data validation. So let's first of all get the syntax right. So it's going to be equals XLOOKUP. My lookup value is going to be that cell there. My lookup array, so I go to my demand support sheet, is going to be, let me just move that out of the way, is going to be the top row with all the programs. That's my lookup array. I'm going to do function for to fix it, and then I'm going to do comma. My return array is going to be this, and I need to include the whole range all the way down to here. Again, I'm going to do function for, and I'm going to close that bracket like so, and hit return. And as you can see now, it's done the drop down. So that now works based on what's in here. If I do that B, it'll change. Put it back to A. So I'm going to take that syntax, do control copy and escape, and I'm going to delete it from there because I don't need it anymore. Then I'm going to go to data validation again on the data ribbon, do list, and I'm going to paste that XLOOKUP formula I did. So I'm going to do control V, then I'm going to click OK. And now I've got the drop down. I chose a different program, different projects. Wonderful. So let's choose project 1, like so. Now this is going to be a short date, so let's put 1st April 24. These are going to be hours, so a number. So if I go home, do number and 1 decimal place. If I enter 4 here, so highlight the cells, do 4, and then press Control Enter to enter it in the range I've selected, and then make that 0 on Saturday and 0 on Sunday. And then as far as the finish of the range is going to be 20th of June 24. So that's a date. That's a date. Excellent. Now we need to do the same principle that we've done for the program and project dependent drop downs for the skill set. So based on the skill set we set, it will then show us the appropriate resources for that skill set. So let's go to our demand support sheet. Let's go to the right here. It's going to be my skill set and resource filters. First one's going to be skill set. So the filter is going to be, so again, in static data, we're going to have a max of 10 skill sets. So again, as a visual reference, equals sequence 10. That's going to be filter, table, skill sets, open square bracket, choose the column, close square bracket, and the include argument is going to be TBL, skill sets again, open square bracket, choose skill set column, close that square bracket where it does not equal blank, i.e. quotation marks. So I'm just going to close that bracket there, hit return. Let's wrap this in a sort. Boom. Just make that wider. So that works. So again, on resource demand, let's just point that to that skill set. So again, data ribbon, data validation again, and I want list. And then I'm going to do the up arrow here. I'm going to point it to this cell here and put the hash marking, hash sign in there to include the spill range. Then enter that and click OK. So we've now got that there. So let's choose architect there. So let's take care of the resource piece that we want. So again, now resources we are going to have up to 100. Yeah. So so let's just mark this here. And again, just so I'll recognize it. So here I'm going to do equals sequence of 100 because we're going to have a max of 100 resources in our resource table. So if I go to static data, resource data, you can see we go up to 100 resources there. So I need to be able to include all those. And then as far as the skills going across the top, so I'm going to have architect and so on going across there. So what I'll do is I'm going to do, again, I'm going to do sequence here. So equals sequence. I don't need rows, I want columns. And this is going to be 10. Close that bracket, return. I'm then going to do the same thing as far as the filter is concerned. So I'm going to go equals filter. My array is going to be skill sets. And again, I'm going to do 2 open square brackets. Skill set. Close that square bracket, colon, open. And then skill set, and then 2 close square brackets, and then the include argument is going to be again table skill sets, 2 open square brackets, skill set, close square bracket, colon, open square bracket, then choose that skill set column again, and then 2 close square brackets where it does not equal empty, i.e. 2 quotation marks. I'm going to close that bracket, hit return. I'm then going to wrap that in a sort. And what I'll do as well is I'm going to put an argument in there, so if it doesn't find anything, leave it blank, like so. Yeah. And then I'm going to wrap it in a sort. And now we're going to do the index function again. So remember, I want the first row here. So 1 is going to be architect, 2 is going to be business analyst, and so on. So I'm going to do index. And the row referencing that index of this array here, I'm going to do comma. I'm going to point it to that cell there, like so. And I'm going to close that bracket, hit return, and there's architect. Yeah, and then I'm just going to do an if error and type to leave it blank if there's any errors, like so. With that done, I should be able to copy that across. Boom. Now, Let's make these a little bit wider so I can see what's going on. Let's do the filter now based on the resource table. So which resources equal architect and so on. So if I go equals filter, the array is I'm going to return table resources, 2 open square brackets, because I'm going to copy this to the right. And I'm going to choose resource column, close square bracket, colon, open square bracket, and then resource again, and 2 close square brackets. And my argument is going to be table resources, 2 open square brackets, where the skill set, yeah, close that square bracket, colon, open square bracket, and then do skill set again, 2 close square brackets, where it equals that cell there. And again, doesn't find anything, just leave it empty, like so. And again, I'm just going to wrap that in a sort. And hit return. So now all I've got to do is copy this first one all the way across to 10, like so. Boom. Again, I'm just going to highlight all this so I can see it all. And I'm going to make it so I can see it as a visual aid. So we're now going to do the XLOOKUP again. So if I go to my resource demand and let's type the XLOOKUP function, so it's going to be equals XLOOKUP. My value is going to be this cell here. My lookup array is going to be this row here. I'm going to do function 4 to lock it, F4 key, and then comma, the return part of that array is going to be this all the way, all the way down to the bottom. It's 100. Yeah, I'm going to do F4 to lock it, close the bracket and hit return, and there you go. So if I change that to business analyst, it changes accordingly. Let's go back to architect. Let's take that formula, copy it, escape from the cell, delete it because I don't need it there, and again go to data validation. Validation again, do list, paste that formula in, click OK, and then there it is. So let's choose Mary there. So we have now created all the drop downs that we need for the demand, resource demand. So let's turn this into a table. So I'm going to select that first row, do Control T. Again, it's selecting the sequence here. So I'm going to move that to column B. And then I'm going to click OK. And again, I need to get this data validation to be copied all the way down in the table. And again, because we didn't start with the first row and tab, it hasn't copied those formats and data validation down. So the way that we're going to resolve that is I'm going to select that first cell with the first data validation, that first row. I'm going to do Shift, Control and down arrow. And then I'm going to go to the data ribbon, data validation, select data validation. It gives me this warning saying, do I want to copy it to the range selected? And I'm going to go yes, and then click OK. So now that data validation has been copied all the way down. I'm going to do the same in the project data validation. So go Shift, Control, down. On the data ribbon, do data validation again, and then select yes, and click OK. And now, As you can see, there's nothing there, but as soon as I put a value in here, B, it's going to show me the relevant projects. That's wonderful. Now, as far as the date's concerned, I want it to be a short date all the way down. So I'm going to do Shift Control down on the home ribbon. I'm going to do short date. These are going to be numbers. So select that range, do Shift Control down, make those numbers, and they're going to have 1 decimal point. This is going to be a short date all the way down, so Shift Control down, and I'm going to make that a short date. And again, select the first cell with the data validation. On the first row, do Shift Control down. On the data ribbon, do data validation and data validation again. Select yes, then click OK. And finally, for Mary, I'm going to do Shift Control down. Say Mary, I mean the data validation. It's got Mary in, or the resource data validation. Again, on the data ribbon, do data validation again. Select yes, and click OK. So that is now done. I'm then going to select the whole table, because remember, when I protect this, I want the user to be able to interact with this table. So I'm going to go Shift Control to the right, and then Shift Control to the bottom, do Control 1, and on the protection, I'm just going to untick that and click OK. And then let's give this a meaningful name here. So I'm going to do there you go. So enter resource demand by program project here in hours. I'm going to select the whole of the top across the table. I'm going to do Control 1, and as far as the fill, I'm going to make it a grey. As far as the font, I'm going to make that bold. Alignment horizontally, I'm going to center across selection, and then click OK. I don't need this column anymore here, so I'm just going to right click and I'm going to delete that column. And last but not least, I need to give this a meaningful name. So I'm going to go on the table selected, table design, and I'm going to call this TBL demand and hit return. So I've now created the table. Let me go ahead and enter some data into this table. And there you go. So now that we've created our last piece of user input, I'm going to hide this demand support sheet here. So I'm going to right click on that and do hide. Then on this table, anywhere selected, I'm now going to move this into Power Query, because there's some things that we need to do this to be able to use the resource demand data. So with the table selected, I'm going to go on the data ribbon, from table and range. So I am going to change this to a date only. So select start, change that to a date only, replace current, fine. I'm then going to go over to the finish, make that a date only, like so, replace current. I'm then going to select these 3 columns here and move them to the left. So them selected, I'm going to drag them across. So to just before start, wonderful. I'm then going to remove all the nulls. So with the program column selected, I'm going to untick the null. And again, over here on the right, I'm just going to click the cog to check it's got the right syntax. So yeah, does not equal null. Wonderful. That's what we want. Click OK. Now, from program up to resource selected, we need to create a row per day and demand here. So with that selected, I'm going to right click and say on pivot other columns. And there we've got that. So I'm just going to double click on this to make it a minute. Call that attribute, change that to day so we know what that is. As far as the value is concerned, this is, I'm going to double click on that. That is going to be our demand. And hit return, and I'm going to change that to a decimal number like so. And now we need to explode this out. So we need to create this demand from the 1st to the 20th of June, remember. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to do add column, custom column. I'm going to call this date, like so. I'm going to do my open curly bracket. I'll start typing number. I want number from. And the reason why we're using this number from syntax is I can't just say create me a list from start to finish, because the list function needs numbers. And with it in the date format, it won't be able to do that. So when we say number from, we're saying extract the number from that date. And that's what this number from does. This function is doing for us. So I'm going to do open bracket, select start, close that bracket, 2 full stops, 1, 2, and number from again, open bracket, choose finish, close that bracket, and then close curly bracket. Syntax is fine. Click OK. And there's our list. And you know by now we click the outward facing arrows to expand it to new rows, like so, and then convert that to a date. So that date column on the home ribbon, just select date. And with that date column now still selected, I'm going to add a column and add it from a date and time, and I'm going to select the drop down and do name of day. So I scroll across, it's now created this column. So remember, I need to be able to do a comparison between the day and the day name, but I can't do it like this. So I'm going to do, on the transform ribbon, do extract first characters, and I'm going to choose the first 3 and click OK. And now we can do a comparison between these 2 columns. And I'm going to use a conditional column to do that. So I'm going to add column. I'm going to choose conditional column. And I'm going to call this day test. And the first column I'm going to do is the day, where it equals, and I want to, instead of putting a value in, I'm going to do the drop down and compare it to another column. And that column I'm going to compare it to is day name, and where they are the same, I'm going to put a Y for yes. Otherwise, put a no, N for no, and click OK. And then what I've got to do to get rid of the duplicates in here and only have the valid days here is do filter on only Y. So I only keep the Y, select Y and click OK. So now we've got our demand. I need to get rid of these columns, these support columns I've been using to clean the data. So I'm going to select that column. I'm going to hold down my control key. So I want that column. I want the skill set, I want the resource, and I want the demand, and I want the date. I want the date. I don't need anything else in here. So I'm going to right click on those selected columns and say remove other columns. And there we have our demand. So I'm going to call this, rename it to demand, and hit return. I'm then going to go to the home ribbon and do close and load to, and it's going to be only create a connection and add this data to the data model and click OK. And there you go. It's created 1022 rows there. So if I then go to my Power Pivot and go to Manage, we can now see that I've got all the data that I need now to build our resource capacity planning dashboard based on that data that's been entered. And there's the demand, like so. And if I go into my diagram view, you can see we've got our tables in there. Now, in the next video, we're going to start doing our data modeling by creating those relationships in here. And we're also going to create some calculated columns in here within our data modeler within Power Pivot. So very much the focus of the next video will be Power Pivot and building our data model. So let me just close that down. Again, it's just giving me that warning because I've gone into the data model. So I'm just going to click Save, and there we go, it's gone. I'm going to close down my query connections window. So as I said, the next video we will focus on Power Pivot and our data model, and we will create that in the next video. I hope you found this informative. If so, it would really help the channel if you remember to click that like, subscribe, and hit that notifications button for future content. I wish you a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and please take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video of this resource capacity planning training series. Bye bye now.